Yep, it definitely is. But on a more positive note, in terms of this past week, John Gibson has been excellent, and I think he really deserves his flower for how well he has played over the stretch. He has given the Ducks a chance to basically be in every single one of these games, and I mean the Colorado game he was not playing. I think that Lucas Dostal played a fine enough game, did not exceed kind of expectation. I think anytime you give up 8 goals, right, you're not going to be happy with the game that you played. You can look at those goals and maybe say some of them are not on him, but regardless, giving up that many goals based upon the chances that were given up, you need him to be better in those situations. But John Gibson over these 2 games was absolutely excellent for the Ducks, both against the Panthers and against the Blues. Gave them chances to be in that game and to come back in that game every single stretch of the way. And I think we're seeing a bit of a resurgence from John Gibson over this last little bit. Ever since he came back from his injury, I think it's every single game he's played, he's been well above expected. And I'm trying to pull up the numbers right now to be able to get that for everyone out there. But it's really insane just how much of a turnaround he has had after the season he had last year.
Yeah, I mean, I really hate just saying that Dostal wasn't good against Colorado because the team's on the back end of a back-to-back. They're playing against Colorado. They're not playing their best. He's still a rookie goalie.
Agreed.
Like, most of those goals, almost all of them weren't on him. It's just one of those things where you can look at the numbers and say, oh, well, he was -4 goals saved above expected. And it's like, sometimes like you just got to watch it. And to me, I'm just not throwing him under the bus for that game, personally.
I don't think I'm throwing him under the bus, but I think it's fair to say he was below what expectation
like, sure,
would be.
8 goals is a lot, but the team in front of him played poorly,
but
like very poorly.
We talked about John Gibson many different times last year with the same exact thing, though.
But John Gibson's also a different caliber of goalie.
Fair.
Like it's a different salary, different resume.
Fair. And I'm not
different sample size.
And I'm not holding it against Lucas Dostal. I think it's just calling it for what it is, I think is important, which is the fact that you can dissect each goal, but at the end of the day, you do need him to be better than that. I think that is a fair statement.
If he's better in that game, to me, like, they lose like 6-2.
Sure.
Instead of 8-2.
Fair.
Like it just wouldn't have made a difference.
Fair.
Like,
But
he wasn't winning them that game. And then for Gibson, looking at his game, part of it is the Ducks, I think, are prioritizing getting him some more rest, which is nice.
I mean, he's still played a lot. Like, over the last week, like, he's played 4 of the 5 games I'm looking at. He played against San Jose, played against Nashville, did not play the back-to-back in Colorado, but played against Florida, played against St. Louis. So he's played in 4 of the last 5 games. Yeah,
but so by not playing against Colorado, that got him 2 days of rest, between games. So that helps. I mean, he sure ain't the one playing the back end of the back-to-back. And that's good. Like, you wouldn't want him playing in those games. I think the biggest thing to me that's standing out with Gibson right now is just the fact that, this is a better environment for him.
Yep.
Like, undoubtedly, if you watch these games, the Ducks are just not really giving up cross-ice chances against. Like, it happens very seldomly. And there isn't a goalie in this world that is going to succeed on a steady diet of, cross-ice chances against. And this isn't to write off John Gibson's past, woes, because they were real. But I think right now you're just seeing what he can do behind a good system. And I don't necessarily know if it's going to continue to this degree, but he's honest. Like, I don't think he's being tasked to do too much right now. And when there is a situation where he needs to step up, he's got the ability to do that. And there's going to be games where that swings back the other way, where he doesn't make the save on a breakaway, on a shorthanded breakaway against, or things like that. Like, there's going to be those games where those big time saves aren't there. But I think just right now his baseline is higher than it's been in a long time.
Yeah, and I think a large part of that is you look at the way the Ducks has played, and we talked about this last week with Nashville. The Ducks have such a well structure in their own zone, where even when they do end up getting hemmed in their own zone, you don't see a whole lot of breakdowns where you're getting glorious chances right through the middle of the slot. I think the Blues game, is the Killorn chance, really sticks out, or the Killorn turnover that led to that chance really sticks out, because there have not been many of those because the Ducks have actually kept things along the wall. When they do turn it over, it's not typically right there where a guy can come down the slot and get a good chance like that. And so I think for the most part, everything is kept to the outside. And you can see that when you look at some of the heat maps for the team also. That's pretty much exactly, I think, what they've been giving up. With him on the ice, the defense, yeah. The vast majority of the shots are coming from around the face-off dot area, basically the middle of the slot. They're getting below league average in terms of the chances that are coming against. And so I think that is something that's been really helpful. And also just, if you look at the Ducks play with him on the ice, they're averaging about 7% less than league average in terms of expected goals against per 60. So they're playing good in front of him, providing him good defense overall, and keeping the shots outside of the middle of the ice and more to the outside at more kind of medium to low danger areas.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's not just about the shot location, because that's obviously very important. You don't want to give chances on the inside. But the thing is, the Ducks aren't allowing that puck to come across the slot.
Yes, true.
And that's the biggest thing, and that's what these heat maps, unfortunately, don't account for as of yet.
True.
And with Gibson, maybe, there could be a scenario where those shots from the quote-unquote outside are coming off of cross-ice plays, and those are actually more difficult to stop than they would appear. He's not having to do that nearly as much as he's had to in the past. And then when things do break down, which is pretty rare when they're in zone, that Killorn play isn't. I don't really put it into that category because that's on a breakout. Mm-hmm. But he's stepping up and he's making difficult saves. They're not as difficult as they've been in the past, which is good because that was an impossible standard to meet. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm taking back every criticism I ever had of John Gibson, because I think when you put up as many years as he did of kind of suboptimal play, I think that has to be held against you at some point when it's like 3-4 seasons in a row. But so far this season, he's showing that, maybe he won't continue this level of play, but he can probably just be average with this team in front of him.
And I think on the flip side of that, not necessarily throw any cold water on this play from John Gibson, but we have seen him play really well through stretches under Dallas Eakins in different situations, and then go cold and kind of essentially play absolutely horrible, have some horrible games that really kind of go to the exact opposite end of the spectrum of the way that he's been playing in these games. But I think you were about to say this, but I don't think that the structure was there in front of him in the way that it is currently to support him when he is kind of back down to earth and maybe not playing at the top level of his game. I mean, what this kind of does for me is it kind of lends a bit of credence to a thought that I had kind of pop up last year after listening to the PDO cast with, I think Kevin Woodley was on, and talking about specifically with Vancouver back when John Tortorella took over the team, and the fact that they had Roberto Luongo in net, and John Tortorella came in, and the system that he played just really did not work for Roberto Luongo. And I think it was something along the lines of John Tortorella really relies upon shot blocking, and Luongo wants to see the puck. With shot blocking, the puck can bounce kind of all different directions. It didn't allow Luongo to get good reads on pucks, and it led him to have some of the worst one of the worst seasons of his career as a result of that. And it kind of leads me to this thought process of, while John Gibson needs to be better because he's being paid at the level that he needs to be better regardless of the system in front of him, we talk about it with players all the time and skaters all the time of, are the coaches putting them in positions to thrive and optimizing the way that they're playing? And I think we can look at the way that Dallas Eakins coached this team and say that it could be possible that the system he employed, or potentially the lack of a system is maybe a better way to put it, just was not conducive to the play style that John Gibson had. Anthony Stolarz was able to thrive in that type of play because I think he's just so big, so stationary, so positionally sound, where he's able to play so well in that system because of essentially the advantages he has physically. Whereas John Gibson really is an athletic goalie that relies upon reading the puck and reading the play and getting out and challenging. And when you're dealing with a lack of a defensive system, that really puts you in a spot to not thrive and have really subpar seasons.
There's probably people listening to this right now like screaming at you, because a lot of people have been saying this to us for a long time.
Well, no, but I made that point. I've made that point last year and just said, but he is still paid to be a good goalie. Like that does not negate the fact you can make that statement and say that while also saying he's been below what he should be doing based upon the shots. Like it can be both parts of that said at the same time.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. You have to really properly balance it. And I think
Yeah.
you can just throw out last year in terms of was the
True.
system, narrowly tailored to John Gibson's play. Like the Ducks just sucked. They were historically awful. They gave up a lot of cross ice chances. If you're an athletic goalie, I hate using the term athletic. They're all athletes. They're all
Aggressive.
athletic.
Let's go aggressive.
When you're an aggressive goalie who's coming out to challenge, and there's a lot of cross ice passes, it's just harder to cover that ground. And when you're like an Anthony Stolarz type, who's a little more conservative, a little more in the blue paint, it's easier to make up that ground. And maybe that's on John Gibson and the Ducks goalie coaching staff for not having made that adjustment to his approach.
Yeah.
Who knows? But right now, the key difference, the fundamental difference to me, and I wish we had stats on this, but it's that John Gibson isn't having to go post to post as often, from face-off dot to face-off dot. And that's just something that, again, little to no goalies are going to succeed against over time. And right now, Gibson is having to really, he's having to make some difficult saves. I'm not saying it's an easy ride for him, but I think that the difference with this quote-unquote streak is that it doesn't really feel like a streak. When John Gibson was having these hot streaks over the last couple of years, it felt against all odds that he is really willing these teams to victory. They have no business being in these games. He's
like he was stealing games.
He's overcoming the system, and that's just, you can't sustain that. No one can sustain that. Whereas right now, like, he's making probably a few extra saves a game, but it doesn't really feel like he's quote unquote hot. It just feels like he's playing well, like he's in the zone. It's a totally different feeling and a totally different optic.
Yep.